Good afternoon and welcome. I believe we have over 300 CEOs and CFOs from around the UK and overseas. For those of you who don't know us, Freeman Clarke, we are the largest, most experienced team of CIOs, CTOs, and IT directors in the world. We've been around for over 15 years, working for mid-market businesses. We are a unique team that's completely independent and unbiased. Today, we are running a masterclass on AI. We're going to cover AI strategies, how to get started. We're going to give you some practical examples of companies that we are working with and how we've moved the needle for them. I'm joined by an expert panel of 4 people from our team. But without further ado, let's get into this. And let me just start by asking our team to share some recent stories from the news about AI, things that have piqued your interest, things that are worth talking about. Just for a couple of minutes, let me start with Brian. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, interesting. I've just come back from Michigan where they were hosting a US Tech Week and a disruptive real estate business there from a standing start has been using conversational AI video avatars and has now transacted $10 million worth of home sales. So an example of how this is changing the game. It's going to be a complete disruptor for real estate in the US.
So that's $10 million of actual revenue. That's not just a kind of crazy West Coast valuation.
It's
That's
not a crazy
actual
West
money.
Coast valuation. These are real dollars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really interesting.
Um,
Jerry.
Yeah, so I find it interesting that in the press we've now started to see people talking about the big companies that are building this massive infrastructure for AI, and they're talking about it in terms of how many gigawatts of electricity these clusters of computers are used. So it's a massive scale, and now bigger scale than even a small town. They're more like a small city scale of electricity. And the thing I find fascinating is that, and we get to use that technology for anything between 10 and £100 a month,
Hmm,
which
yeah,
is incredibly cost effective.
it is remarkable, as you say. Joe.
Yeah, I'll build on that one actually. I think the great news story from September is the amazing amount of investment that's going into the kind of UK AI infrastructure over the next 5 years. That's really going to drip through to kind of giving really powerful, good value AI to all companies.
Hmm. And Paul.
Yeah, perhaps to put a slight downer on this, I've been looking at the use of AI agents that are being deployed by a lot of companies. It was in the press that last week that 64% of UK workers are actually describing these as unreliable, and I don't know whether that's a threat that they see from them. But the problem is that companies are deploying AI in this way, but the trust behind the technology is lagging, and that's a big issue for leadership. You've got to deploy the AI, but you've got to make sure you build the trust behind it.
It's a good point, and I mean this is going to be a kind of warts and all real world discussion of this stuff, and the realities are not always what you'd want them to be. Having got underway, where I wanted to start was that this is such a big issue, and there's so much news, and the term AI has almost lost its meaning completely. So I guess the question I wanted to start with is if you are a business leader, a CEO, a CFO, where and how should you start? Where do you begin this journey? Jerry, you've got some thoughts on this.
Yeah, my view is that the very first thing a business leader, certainly the chief exec, the owner, whoever's leading the business, needs to think about is really why would you embrace this at all? And think about that question for yourself and make sure you understand what it is you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it. For most businesses, that tends to be around 4 different things. It's either profit, you want to increase your profits, it's like, or perhaps you want to increase the valuation of your business. Maybe you want to increase client engagement, or maybe you just want to change the world. But one way or another, there's something that you want to do that's better than you did before. You need to figure out why that is. Then you can help use that as the vision, and all good leadership needs that to help drive your people to do the right thing with this new tech.
So this is about being driven by business strategy rather than Clever tools, shiny toys.
Correct. It's not just a toy, is it? This is something we want to use to make our businesses and organizations better. And the same is true even for charities, you know. So it's not necessarily profit, it might just be about efficiency
Mm.
or relevance. Yes.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I mean, just on that point, one of the newsletters that we sent recently was about the MIT report that 95% or something of AI projects were failing. And a lot of the reason for this is AI projects that are born in the technical team, that are created by the technical team, and eventually unveiled by the technical team to a business for whom it's somewhat irrelevant, you know, and that this then just becomes a sort of a football that gets kicked around, or you know, no one owns it, no one cares about it. Interesting, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, where I am today, actually, it was completely different. It's a law firm, and the kind of founding partner at their annual get together, he turned the afternoon into an AI kind of session. He ran it himself, and everybody in the company sat in tables. They came up with ideas for using AI to not just make incremental improvements, but to really transform the kind of service delivery in the company. And we came up with some great ideas, and it's been fantastic because he got instant buy-in from people, and we've kind of stolen 3 months of time on planning and working things out because we chose things on the day. They voted on them, we're doing them, and 5 months later we're implementing those systems. That's how you start, I think.
Yeah, interesting. And apart from anything else, it is an opportunity to get everyone together. And the reason I say that is that a chief exec said that to me recently. You know, that AI in some ways is one of those interesting, exciting things, and it gives them an opportunity to get the team together, not to talk about the usual issues and problems that we tend to be preoccupied and spend our time with.
We had a great afternoon, and it came out with some cracking ideas.
Mm, mm.
Yes, I ran a workshop just 2 days ago with a local charity. And what I saw was that the moment we started talking about things, you could see immediately the teams starting to collaborate more with each other, helping each other to say, oh, I can do this with this tool and, you know, help, which is lovely to see in any team.
Yeah, interesting. Brian.
Yeah, so a kind of complementary view. I love Jerry's sort of passion play, and I'm normally in that camp, but pain also works quite well. So with one of my large clients, we got the whole of the top 50 in the organization together, and we looked at what the biggest pain points were, whether it was customer acquisition, cost of service, retention, and all those things. And then we asked the question, what's impossible at the moment? And can we fix it? So it would be impossible to acquire customers for 1p, right? How do we do that? It would be impossible to have 100% retention. How do we do that? And my favorite one was if we could listen to every customer and hear what they were thinking, what would we do differently if we knew what they really wanted? And so that's what we're going to set about doing. And and the term impossible refers to since November 22, what is now possible that wasn't possible, and a lot of those things can now be done.
What I'm
Absolutely.
struck by here is that what we're not talking about is how to use Microsoft Copilot or something like that. You know, not that that's, I mean, I'm not being negative about Microsoft Copilot, but we're starting here from very much top-down view, which is what is this business about? What are we trying to achieve? What are the things, the great opportunities or great pain points or whatever, and then trying to drive those things into initiatives and projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great news story for CEOs. You don't have to become an overnight expert in AI. You need to be the expert in your business and then ask the question, how can AI help me retain, recruit, accelerate, or whatever the drivers for the business are?
Interesting. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean it's very much the same story. One of my clients, the managing director there said, let's look at what AI can do. And so we got sort of 4 or 5 people from across the business, and we just looked and went through each part of the business and said, what could AI do here? What could we do there? And we came across a great area of the business where there's people doing repetitive tasks. And we looked at it and said, "Yep, we could use AI here." So we're now adopting it in that part of the business, and that's going to enable them to do more with the same resources that they've got at the moment, which is a great news story there.
Can we just drill in a little bit to the kinds of things that came out of these discussions? Because actually, in many ways, you're all saying the same thing, which is about getting the senior team together, identifying big opportunities, this kind of thing. But what are the kinds of themes that came out of these discussions? Well, can we identify some common features of the sorts of initiatives that SME and mid-market businesses would say are the opportunities for AI for them?
Well, there's first off, there's that I found certainly a common factor where immediately people do talk about their own personal productivity, and there's definitely an element of that that is to be had. So if any part of your job is writing or summarizing documents or writing reports, anything like that, clearly that there's goodness to be had with AI, and the same with images and pictures and videos. Of course there is, but of course you also have to look at where are the wider opportunities for the business. And so you find that there are particular areas that are commonly really useful with AI. So knowledge-based systems, such as that you can be used by a support team, customer support team. An AI knowledge base is so much better than a traditional kind of keyword search knowledge base. And we've seen that implemented in several companies that are clients with massive benefits, 20 to 30% more efficiency within those teams. And that's without making the AI directly interface with your customers. That's just making it interface with your customer support team. So there's a lot to be had there.
So the content knowledge management, I think, is a classic example that we see a lot. And as you say, AI provides a means of accessing things like technical documents, user documents, training materials, whatever it is, in a way that's radically improves on previous experience. The other one that always comes to my mind is B2B sales teams and helping sales teams develop propositions, identify the right products, identify opportunities for prospects in the language of the prospect, those kinds of areas where I think we often hear examples from our clients.
Yeah, and an example of that was I was working with one business where they launched a multilingual service and suddenly started picking up customers in non-English speaking countries because previously they hadn't been able to make sense of the English products or they weren't marketed in those countries. You know, that company has seen a 25% increase in sales as a result of doing that. They couldn't have hired a German speaking or Romanian speaking or Algerian speaking team, but now they can go to all those countries with their English products.
I think that's an example of what's impossible.
Yeah.
You know, and you could end up with that on your list. How can we acquire clients in Algeria? Well, that's impossible. Well, it kind of isn't anymore.
Yeah. So would you ever have gone for an insect farming client in Algeria? Possibly not top of your list, but now you can, because not only can you speak Algerian, you can be an expert in insect farming.
Yes, indeed. And just as the internet using just straightforward websites enabled smaller companies to appear much bigger and more successful than they perhaps actually were, the same is true of this, because if you have a large company, you can have vertically oriented, industry sectored sales teams. But in a small business, you may only have 2 or 3 salespeople. You can't do that. So with AI, though, you can do some really clever industry research, like say, tell me what's going on in the ice cream wholesale market right now. And it will give you a pretty good basis of an answer that a smart salesperson who's not necessarily an expert in that field can use to help tailor their proposal to that business.
Funny story, really, but we recently had that feedback from a prospect that we were remarkably well briefed on their company and their industry sector. And of course, the answer was that we'd simply done our research using AI. The other area that I think keeps sticking out is sentiment analysis, indications of clients or prospects, early warnings about retention, and indeed staff. You know, kind of reading between the lines and understanding what's going on. Have any of you got examples of these kinds of areas?
One of the current clients is doing just that. Because retention is really, really important to them, they're now starting to look at what are all the indicators of retention. A while ago, I ran a fintech, and we were handling invoices, $200 billion worth of invoices across the world. And we could start to see from the invoice trends who was going to struggle financially, who was doing really, really well. And then you could take appropriate action with credit management and offers of help and all the rest of it. So now you can look for those patterns that no one's either got the time or the tools or the cleverness to see, and AI tools will come along and say, hey, your Northern Ireland business is starting to grow exponentially. What's happened? Oh, well, it's because there's been a series of grants or whatever it might be. Patterns that you're not normally looking for. One of the patterns we found recently was the volume of discounts going to Japanese clients meant that that business was now unprofitable. But no finance person had ever seen that in the last 2 years. But now suddenly the numbers pop up as on the Hall of Shame report.
Joe, were you going to chip in there?
Several of my clients are in kind of investment and wealth management, and it's very expensive to acquire clients. You want to keep them. You never want to lose them. Occasionally, companies do. It would be really nice to be able to identify clients that were feeling just that little bit sad about us before they get to the point of kind of moving away. And indicators of that can be found in kind of portfolio values from data. It can be found in annual meetings where if you have the transcripts from the meetings, or even the not just transcripts but the sound from the meetings, from the tone of it, you can get sentiment of were they feeling good during that annual review meeting. Telephone calls, sentiment analysis. If you add all those into kind of a bundle, you can and we are working on getting a picture of how those customers are kind of feeling about us, so that they never walk away.
And I mean, this may sound like kind of black magic, but it isn't. It's not that difficult, and the value is enormously high. We all know, because we're all told time and again, the value of existing clients over new clients. So actually going to this effort to keep high value clients is enormously worthwhile, isn't it?
It isn't. The basic building blocks are there. They really are. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, this would have been just too difficult to really to do. But now all the basic building blocks are in applications we already have.
Yeah. And you can start doing some of that very easily. You can take even an internal all hands meeting, if you're running it on Teams, just run the transcript through. And we know there's all sorts of tools that can do nice minute taking and great action lists and things like that. Those are pretty standard. But you can take the same transcript and just ask questions of an AI, like who were the biggest contributors, who didn't contribute, and just ask it, well, what was the general sentiment of that meeting? To give you a feeling, because when you're presenting, you're the leader of business. You're not necessarily seeing that, and it's hard over Teams. As opposed to when you're in a room with your whole team, maybe you had got a feeling of positive or negative, but with the transcript, that can give you some extra pointers.
And those same transcripts, if you're talking to customers, a friend's business, we sat down and said, what problems are people struggling with? Number one problem was really obvious. It was easily guessed. Number two problem, your products are very noisy, aren't they? It's kind of like, no, they're not. This is high-end audio. There's no noise. And I said, well, for 22 years, no one's ever told you they're worried about noise. But now you know. Now you can rebrand them as noise-free. You can write white papers. You can do whatever you need to do. But no one had ever told you that.
Okay, so listen, let's just switch gears for a second, and let's just go around the table briefly and just do a kind of a little bit of myth busting for a couple of minutes. If you were busting some myths that are out there that you've heard people say, what would you draw attention to? Paul, let me start with you.
I think the first myth is really people are seeing AI, they're using it, they're really getting the right answers from it, and they're getting really friendly with it. They're thinking that it's actually human and it's thinking like them, and it's not. It's not. What we're seeing with tools like ChatGPT is just really, really clever prediction. It doesn't actually understand what you're asking it to do. It doesn't know what the difference between right and wrong. So it will do things like hallucinate. It's very good at mimicking intelligence, and that's why you think that the technology is almost human-like. But it sounds convincing, but you've got to be a bit careful with it. It's not real.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think human-like is absolutely right. In the same way, you've got to be extremely careful with humans, many of whom are quite inaccurate and say things that are wrong. Joe,
I'd take being really good at prediction as a win with most humans a lot
yeah,
of the time. But no, I get quite passionate about it because I work with a lot of law firms and kind of investment companies, and almost always you get someone who says that the information security or data protection risks and policies are just too difficult to work out. So let's not do anything right now. And I think this is usually wrong. I think if you're in a Microsoft kind of ecosystem and you go for Copilot, or if you're in a Google ecosystem and you go with Gemini, um, the security posture pretty much goes with your platform. And whilst there are some things to be done, it's not a great engineering challenge to do it. So the myth is that these are just too difficult to do in those kinds of companies. They're not. You can get going.
and your experience is from some pretty highly regulated businesses there. And I mean, your background is in those areas, so this is not kind of superficial. This is not a superficial view.
It's absolutely they're all regulated in one form or another, and they all have boards who are hypersensitive to information security and data protection for all the reasons that we could understand.
Mm.
So these things are at the forefront of everyone's mind, but they are not reasons to do nothing. There are some challenges there, but if you stay in your ecosystem, an engineering team can solve all of that.
Brian,
10 years ago, I spent 10 million, £4 million over a couple of years with loads of AI companies and professors and leading academics to build an AI solution to secure Apple as a client. The myth today is, oh, but it's still expensive, it's still difficult, it still takes a long time, doesn't it? And the answer to that is no, it doesn't. I've got a manufacturing client that was live in 4 weeks. They reduced support calls by two-thirds by having an interactive agent that could talk to them, and it cost them £4,000 a month with no setup fees. The
brilliant.
game has
Yeah,
changed.
indeed so. And our market is SMEs and mid-market businesses, and we are building plenty of solutions, not always quite as cheap as that, but for affordable sums. Jerry.
I believe there's a myth that AI can't be creative, and I really don't believe that at all. An AI plus a human can be very creative. And if you don't believe me, just try searching your friendly AI for recipes for a banana loaf, and then say, "Oh, can you give me some more that perhaps I haven't heard before?" And it will give you more. Or I asked it to tell me what is a sensible way to commute to work if I live 2 or 3 miles away, and give me some really wacky ideas, and comes up with an electric powered pogo stick. Well, I wouldn't have come up with that. Perhaps more real world. I've seen real world context where AI engineering design, so AI supporting an engineering design, has helped create really amazing designs for products such as a bulkhead in an airplane that just wasn't obvious for a human to design, and so it can come up with some really amazing solutions.
Jerry, can I chip in on that one and say that's one of the great uses of AI, where instead of having a singular solution, you say, tell me what the alternatives are.
Mm.
I think building a factory in Spain is needed. What else? Well, you could build your own airline, or you could have boats going over the channel, and you may dismiss them, but actually exposing the sea of opportunity, even if they are electric pogo sticks, actually gives you more options.
So top tip is, if you want more answers and different answers, then don't just be okay with what the AI first tells you. Go back and say, look, okay, I hear your answer, but I want some more creative ones. And it will do that.
One of our clients is in novelty products, and a significant limiting factor to their business is actually just ideation of more novelty products. And they're using AI substantially to kind of unblock that choke point. Getting back into a more kind of significant issue, for many business leaders, their concern, going back to Joe's point really, is about the law, is about compliance, security, and how AI is changing that landscape. So, how should a chief exec or CFO approach this problem? Joe.
if you're a small mid-sized company and you're already invested in a Microsoft platform, or you're already invested in Google Workspace platform, and you stay within your ecosystem, I think you're on decent ground to begin with. There's some work to be done. There's some policies you need to put in place, but actually you can make it work. I think the risk factor of not doing that is actually greater because we get all these reports telling us that 70, 80% of UK employees are using personal Gen AI tools for business purposes. That's a much bigger risk factor than a company saying, actually, let's sit down and do it. Let's give people some tools that they can safely use and remove the risk that they're using their own personal Gen AI to do things which they're going to do anyway.
Yeah, there is a reality that that if you think you're choosing to do nothing here, all you're choosing to do is know nothing about what you are actually doing. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
but this does your point though relates to one of the questions that was posed before this, which is about the kind of governance approach and the sort of policy framework that companies need to put in place in order to stay legal, for want of a better word. There's a lot to be done here. This is just part of the cost of doing business, yeah?
Yeah, I think it is. And I kind of almost, think back to, when GDPR came in. There was an awful lot of work that was needed to do to get people with the right policies and so forth in place to make GDPR work. And there was work to be done, but after 6 months, people said, well, actually, we know how to do this now. It's just kind of rinse and repeat doing it with another company. And I think we're getting to that place now with AI and policies that people who are practitioners in the industry know what needs to be done. And yes, those things have to get done. Companies have to adopt the right policies, put the right data loss prevention tools in place. But it isn't that new now. It may have
Yeah.
been 12, 18 months ago, but now it's a well-trodden path.
If you compare it to information security, where you do need to have a battery of documents and so on, policies in place, but no one is starting with a blank sheet of paper. Everyone is starting from existing documents and templates and so on and so on. So it's just one of those things that we have to do. Jerry.
Yes, I find that in terms of legal issues, people sometimes have got hung up with am I going to get sued if I use a picture that's generated with an AI and it looks a bit like something from a current artist, maybe it looks like a Banksy or something, and we're going to get sued because of that. And actually, the first thing is it's actually more important to first look at whether or not the AI generative tool that you're using gives you the right to use the output commercially. Certainly, whether, can you just publish it? Is that okay? Or can you even resell it? Because that's the first level of importance. The other stuff to do with whether or not a company is going to get sued because of the breach of copyright of the original thing. And there's various cases like the New York Times currently, taking OpenAI to court. Those things will eventually get resolved, and they are more complex, but they don't directly impact smaller businesses at this point in time. So stick to, do you have the right to use the tool, and the outputs is the very first thing to look at.
Paul.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think that companies need to take a sort of a leadership role here, though, in the use of AI, because there are a lot of people out there using lots of tools, lots of companies generating new tools which are AI. And the problem that you've got is if that tool is perhaps hosted in the US or Russia or somewhere like that, people think this looks good. I'm just going to copy and paste my company information into that, and you've got yourself a data leakage issue. So, you've got to be taking the lead here and saying to staff, look, before you start using these AI tools, let's have a look at them. Let's just make sure that they are what they say they are.
Yeah, it's super important. I've seen that a lot because there are so many new companies have been formed with lots and lots of tools, and most of them give you a free trial. And if you're in a situation where your people are trying all these things out, it's very easy to get sucked into that. And that's not the right thing. You must have some element of control. And even with the larger tools, the well-known ones, you must keep checking back on their terms and conditions, whether or not they still maintain privacy or not. Recently, OpenAI made a change where their default went from keeping your data private to making the default setting not private.
Yeah.
And they didn't really announce that in very broadly. So if you didn't realize that was happening, you would have missed it. So it is something where at the moment one does have to keep a watching eye on what's going on.
What I was going to say was I think there are two sides to this. One is about data leakage, to Paul's point, and the other is about inadvertently breaching someone else's copyright. And that your policies and training need to cover both of these things. So one of the questions that's come up, I'm looking at, is about people's use of natural language in their prompts. And there is a training issue here. You know, I can't remember. I don't know if you remember that we had a legal expert at one of our conferences, and he was talking about image generation because we use AI for image generation for some of our marketing material all the time. And his point was, don't in the prompt say, can I have an image of the following things in the style of Batman or something? Because don't be surprised if you then end up with something which resembles a Batman style, and you end up finding yourself in deep water if you go down that road. So there are training policy and usage issues here about how we both share, how we both use our data to avoid making it public, and how we use other people's data to avoid infringing their copyright. Brian, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm just making a note to remove all my Batman images from my.
Yeah.
Um, I have a contrarian view. Not that I agree with everything that the guys have said, but my contrarian view is I've got a lot of clients that do an amazing job of keeping their public information secret from their customers. Their websites are under the radar. They have undiscoverable support, hard to find product information. And I'm working with a large retailer with their 25,000 products to propose the right product that matches the customer needs rather than saying, here's a search box, good luck, off you go. And so for me, it's a mindset thing. If you think, oh, it could go wrong, I better keep it secret, that's different to an abundance mindset that said, I need to share as much as I can, except for the private stuff. It's the same set of solutions, but if you do it with an abundance mindset, you could just find that you're keeping too much secret from your customers and they're going elsewhere as a result.
I think that's a really good point, and I do think sometimes that this caution can become an unnecessary blocker. You know, I mean, we will have countless meetings, and you could be very concerned about those meetings becoming public. But frankly, is there anything particularly important or damaging in any of those meetings? You know, is anyone really? I'm much more concerned that some of the people in the meetings might not complete the actions that they agree to, rather than the contents of the meeting is going to become public. What's the real business risk, and is there a danger that we simply get into that sort of mindset, as you say, which prevents us from taking steps forward? Can we talk briefly about cybersecurity and AI? Because we're obviously, you know, everyone is concerned about cybersecurity, and rightly so. That is not a myth, and that is a real danger for everyone. And so AI moves the game on. Who's got some thoughts on this?
There was a case in America not that long ago where a lady received a phone call purporting to be from her son, and it actually turned out it was a bot that was asking for money. She asked where the money should be sent, and the call was terminated. So she phoned her son up and found actually it was not real at all. Now that was the first time I'd heard of it. It's happening more and more now, and AI is going to make this more and more realistic. It's going to be able to answer the questions that you ask. So you really need to start being careful about that. That's a really dangerous side to
Yeah,
AI.
the idea that you can believe what you see obviously is just not the case anymore, or that you can believe what you hear is just not the case. Brian, you were talking about phone calls scraping your voice.
Yeah, I don't know how many people on the call have had calls ring in from geographic numbers that then don't answer and assumed it was call centers. In fact, what they're doing is harvesting your voice. So if you talk to them and tell them to go away and answer with your name and all the rest of it, don't be surprised if your phone number and your voice is used to spoof something,
Mm.
because that's what they're all about. And they're just randomly calling people. And it doesn't matter that 99 out of 100 don't answer, the one out of 100 will, and they're just compiling a database. And that's what Paul's just described.
The defensive side of this is also important, though, isn't it? Because AI is enhancing all of our cybersecurity tooling and helping businesses to stay secure. I mean, one of the classic issues with cybersecurity tools has always been the vast logging and, false positive reporting, thousands and thousands of lines. And often the issue there for IT teams has been trawling through to find the real problems, and AI is significantly easing those kinds of burdens. Yeah.
It's an arms race, isn't it? The bad guys are using AI to kind of facilitate their paths into your business. The good guys are also tooling up with AI to kind of defend. It is an arms race. If all I can say is if your technology platform is not using some of the kind of newer defensive technologies, then you're going to become a point of weakness that they will exploit. So yeah, look at your cybersecurity defenses and make sure that they're appropriate.
Some things are very easy to defend against, though. Like, so for example, the thing about sending money to the wrong place because it was a fake question is, it's pretty easy to have for your accounts team, and it has been for some time, to say, look, we just don't do that. And if there is money to be sent, then we always out of band make a call using a different technology. So if an email came in, you use a telephone, and vice versa, to contact that person directly, and with information that wasn't in that original thing. So you don't phone back on the number they phoned on, all this kind of stuff. So you can kind of defeat it with some relatively simple protocols. So, be aware of that.
Yeah, I agree. Cybersecurity often is about relatively simple protocols. This just moves those relatively simple protocols on. You just need to be aware of the fact that you can no longer necessarily believe a voice call. You can no longer necessarily believe things that used to be okay. So it just becomes slightly more difficult on both sides.
But one of my clients has moved from using telephony as a way of authenticating who they're speaking to kind of other means, because you just can't trust that the telephone call is, even though they sound like the person that you can't trust it. So it's a question of adopting another means of authenticating that person that's kind of more robust. So processes for dealing with customers, certainly in the investment management and wealth management world, are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't believe that these things are really good already, then there's an example. There's a Korean, quite famous podcaster who has a YouTube style channel, and he broadcast an entire episode with an AI avatar pretending to be him, and nobody noticed.
Brilliant. And of course, the same could be true for us as well, couldn't it, Jerry?
We're all avatars.
So let's just move on to the final kind of area I wanted to talk about before we tackle some of these questions. This is new, and like all new technology, there is a big question about timing. What would you say about that, particularly in the light of, for example, that MIT report about 95% of AI projects failing? We talked before this call about the fact that somewhere between 33 and 70%, depending on what you read, of UK companies are adopting AI. What would you say about timing, and what would your advice be to business leaders on the call? Jerry.
For me, it's about you've still got to do something now. Don't listen to everything you hear on the media necessarily, but focus in on what you can successfully do for your business. So forget a little bit of the hype, as it were, because remember, they're all interested in just selling news. What you're interested in is making your business better. And if you focus in on the biggest problems that you have, then you will do well.
I guess what you're saying there comes back to what you said right at the top of this webinar, which is to start from what your business is all about.
Correct. Yes. Make sure that you start with something that's meaningful to you, and then drive that project just like any other to a successful outcome. And sometimes that means you'll need outside skill sets to come in and support it and help you make a good job of it. Which is why it's useful to find people who've done a little bit of these things before and created some successful projects elsewhere.
Paul?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. AI is a solution. It's a solution to a problem, but you don't start with the solution. You've got to start with the problem. What is the problem? Where are you trying to fix that problem? Is it a pain point, a bottleneck, a task that nobody wants to do? Then you say, right, okay, now we've got the problem. AI might be the solution. It might not be the solution. But in one of my clients, we've got three people that are just receiving emails and they're filing the attachments. It's a very sort of mundane project, a very mundane task. And so we've implemented AI to actually take that away from them. And almost the more boring the task, the better suited it is for AI, because AI doesn't tire. It doesn't, it doesn't get bored. It just carries on doing the same thing over and over again, which is what you want in that sort of environment. It's starting with the problem and not with the solution.
So that's an interesting example, Paul. So let's depersonalize it, just in case your client are listening. But the question has just come in from Neil, and he is asking about automation projects and the danger that the staff supporting the implementation are kind of turkeys voted for Christmas. How would we address that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think this very much comes down to trust. The turkeys voting for Christmas, they know they're going to get eaten at Christmas. If that's not the case, if you're not starting the project by saying, look, we're looking to reduce headcount, who's in? If you start in that direction, people are going to say, yeah, I've got other things to do. But if you're starting with the direction of saying that this project is going to make your life easier and better, not get rid of you. It's going to enable you to do other things and focus on other tasks, expand the business, in a positive way. Then those turkeys aren't voting for Christmas, so to speak.
It was interesting. I don't know if you remember, again, at one of our conferences where we were having a long conversation about AI, and one of the things that I remember, because I think I put my hand up and said it to everyone, was I was intrigued at how few of the examples, what the company was really trying to do was to slash headcount. That many examples were about companies that wanted to enable scalability, to avoid people having to do repetitive and pointless tasks, and they want to redeploy people to value-adding activities. They want to redeploy people to things that will make a difference from the point of view of customers. All businesses want to be efficient, but actually there aren't many businesses where the aim is just to cut as many heads as possible. And I guess your point is to make that clear from the outset. That's not what we're all about here. Any
Yeah.
other comments or experience of this with our clients?
All of my examples over the last 18 months are examples where the objective is to provide a better service to customers, to improve the way things are done, to have a better product. I don't have any examples in any of my clients where the outcome was reducing headcount. Maybe that's the nature of the companies I'm kind of working with, but that's my experience.
Yeah.
I know that's what the media tells us is the very likely outcome of these things. I haven't seen that happen.
Okay, going back to the question, which was about timing and how to kind of move forward and how to think of this in the context of, on the one hand, a lot of UK businesses throwing themselves into this, and on the other hand, a lot of companies reporting the fact that they're not seeing the benefits they would expect. Brian, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, this comes back to where do you focus and how fast you go. The people that I've seen not getting it right that I've come across are the ones that are saying, hey, we've got ChatGPT and we're rewriting our emails or we're writing reports. And the ones that are addressing it in the way that Jerry and Paul and Joe describe, I've got a client where the criteria is, will this project potentially add 1 million to the top line? Will it benefit a third of our customers, or will it positively impact a third of our staff? To Joe's point about it's not about saving staff, it's about giving them capacity to do more interesting work and therefore increasing the capacity of the business. And if you fall short of that million and you hit 800,000, well, that's not a bad day's work. And if you only get to a quarter of your staff benefiting, these are good targets. And that
I thought that was a really
differentiates.
interesting example, Brian, where to provide some guardrails to say, right, go out and find some examples, but what we're looking for is examples that have the capacity to generate an additional £1 million and so on. There were another couple of criteria that you had as well. I thought that was a great approach.
Yeah, because otherwise you do the meeting room booking solution,
Yeah, absolutely right. And you're messing around, and it's a shiny tool. Joe, anything?
there are kind of tools and capabilities that it's providing us. But this isn't about technology. And I took slight offense when you said earlier on that this is new technology, because I built my first AI system as a developer 36 years ago. So the stuff's been around for a long time, just we didn't have the horsepower to do it. And now we do. So now there's some great capabilities out there, but it's all about working out from a business whether there are pain points or opportunities. And if you start there and you happily find that these new great technologies can help you solve those problems, then great. That's where you need to be. But if you start from the point of view of we've got technology we need to deploy, how do we use it? You're bound to get stuck in the mire.
Okay, that's great. So listen, let me just switch now, because a question came up which I had glossed over really, or we've glossed over, but it is important. Someone has asked here that we've talked about AI, we've talked about ChatGPT, we haven't really drawn distinctions between these things. So when we're talking about AI, we're talking about a range of products and solutions, a range of different technologies that all kind of have come to a level of maturity at a similar time. Would someone care to just take 30 seconds to just subdivide that space and explain the difference between generative AI, ChatGPT, versus AI in its different forms? Is anyone going to be brave enough to do that?
I can jump in
Come on, Jerry.
to start, and then we'll start the conversation.
Yeah.
So first off, the famous tools like ChatGPT and some of the others, these are generative AI tools, and there are several of them that are based all around simplest ways to say, well, they are good at reading and writing English text, and they do that by predicting the next word. They're sort of which they're very, very good at, and the quality of those is actually all pretty good now. All of the big players are very close in how good they are. So most of the time, it makes little difference which of those tools you use to get a decent answer. Certainly for most questions, you find that the main differences come via things like, well, which interface do you prefer? Somebody else has said, which ecosystem are you already in? Those things matter. Beyond that, of course, there are specialist tools then for generating images. There are specialist tools for generating videos and for audio. So they all work in a similar way to those text-based tools, but they're aimed at different types of media. And of course, some of the platforms mix them all together and allow you to combine all of those things. So all of those tools are similar in that they are generative tools and they allow you to generate different forms of media. There are other types of AI. There's AI that, for example, is good at doing anomaly detection, and there are things that are able to tell the difference. We've got one client where we're looking at the quality of welds in metalwork from the images, and that's slightly different. So there are other tools available. So you don't necessarily have to just think about the ones that keep coming up in the news, that it's all about ChatGPT or Copilot. It isn't necessarily. The world of AI is quite a bit broader than that. But I don't believe it's particularly helpful to get too hung up on exactly the detail technically of how they work. It's okay just to have a bit of an overview. So the all I would point people at is that with these current tranche of tools, it is worth understanding things like that they don't really do maths. ChatGPT doesn't really do maths. It's doing it by predicting the outputs. And therefore, as soon as you give it a question which is really complicated, it's not very good at it. So you're better off using an actual maths tool that does it
A
programmatically.
bit like many humans, Jerry. As
Yeah.
soon as you give it a problem that's a little bit complicated.
Correct. So the real answer to the question is, depending on your application, you should have a look around. There are various tools available, and some are more specialist than others. And so I wouldn't necessarily just go and use the same tool for every single job.
In the examples that we were talking about before, a lot of which was about knowledge management, sentiment analysis, a lot of these kinds of things, there's also that whole area of expert judgment, and what I guess you call optimization problems, problem solving, which are different types of technology, the weld analysis, or
Yeah.
we see quite a lot of clients where actually we're helping them optimize logistics kinds of problems, whether they are in manufacturing or whether they're running an entertainment venue
Yes.
or like manufacturing or food manufacture, but they're fundamentally dealing with complex problems and optimization problems.
Another whole category we haven't touched on is recommendation engines. So there's a good case for looking at, can I recommend based on your past sales numbers, what products should I be recommending to people so they will buy more of different products that I also sell,
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. We've got to remember that AI has been, as Joe said, it's been around for years. So that recommendation engine, that's Netflix is the best example of that. But we've had AI in chess computers for years, sat navs, the vacuum cleaners that go around your house. It's all examples of AI. Now we've got Chat GPT. It seems to have boomed over the last couple of years, but there's lots of examples of AI out there.
Yeah, and I guess the complexity of this landscape is in a way why we would come at this from the point of view of what's the business trying to achieve, rather than looking at, to use the example that we talked about when we were preparing for this, rather than use your Swiss Army knife example, Paul, because then what am I going to do with all these kind of crazy bits? The question is, what am I trying to achieve, or what are the things I might try to achieve? There's a few questions which are linked questions about de-skilling, I guess might be the best way to put this. So AI and automation taking teams perhaps to a point where they no longer have critical mass, or where you no longer have the skills in your organization, or where you can't train up new people. These kinds of problems. Have we seen any of this in our clients?
I'll start that one and go revert back almost to my previous answer that
Hmm.
I personally haven't seen that happening. And I wouldn't trust any of these tools to make decisions for me without a qualified human being operating the tool, seeing what
Mm.
the output is, and making a valued human judgment based on it. So these are all tools to make people, in my mind anyway, these are all tools to make people better, more efficient at what they do, and to have a better kind of work experience. They're not things that are from what I've seen that are at anywhere at the point where you would say, well, we can get rid of a whole bunch of people now because we've got machines doing that thing. I just haven't seen that at all.
The counter argument to this, that I know is that we've talked about in the past, Joe, is about how AI allows you to institutionalize knowledge and to capture knowledge and make it part of the business rather than it being part of the people. Because the truth is, people come and people go. So, but what this allows you to do is to take that knowledge and make it part of the business. And there's got to be a long-term benefit to that, from a kind of value and viability point of view.
That
Knowledge
talk,
management was my thing at one point. We kind of hid AI in knowledge management, I think, and it's extremely valuable. It's not just for companies, but for humanity as a whole. Knowledge is the way in which we are kind of evolving as a species, I think.
Basis of civilization, I guess.
creating agents that can have that pool of knowledge when whilst people come and go. It's the insurance industry is looking at it where I'm working with some clients. It's true in manufacturing more so than ever. I've got a manufacturing client where everyone's in their 70s now and wondering how they're going to pass the baton on. So knowledge is key.
Let me just go to the very last bit then. Let's just share a pearl of wisdom each, a key takeaway, something that you want people to remember after this webinar. Paul, what would be the one thing that you would say?
I would say AI won't replace leaders and leadership, but leaders who don't know about AI will be replaced by those who do.
Joe.
AI is now hot, perhaps overheated, but my prediction is it's going to get even hotter.
Brian.
Yeah, mine's a simple one. Go and look at a tool called Manus, MANUS, for deep research. It'll produce amazingly researched reference documents, PDFs, slides, websites, prompts for you, and allow you to answer the questions that some of my colleagues have alluded to earlier.
Jerry, can you give a pearl of wisdom and then talk very briefly about our opportunity assessment in 20 seconds?
Yeah, sure. So the race at the moment for all the big companies is they're creating agents to connect with AI, and some of those agents even call out to humans, and some are just other AIs, and some are other interesting tools. So there's a whole raft of development, and that is addressing all of the criticisms that we currently have about what is bad about AI. So all those problems are going to get solved, and this is the worst it will ever be, is my pearl of wisdom. It's only ever going to get better from here. And in terms of opportunity assessment, we've done this many times with companies. We do some really good workshop sessions with businesses of all industries. We've done many different sessions now, and it all is about finding the best projects and the most appropriate things to work on in any given industry and in any given specific business. Where are you going to get value and make a difference for your business?
Very good. Thank you all very much. And thanks for all the questions. We will get back to you if we didn't answer your question. Richard, thank you for that question about where do you buy a shirt like Brian's. We didn't get around to that. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much indeed.